Hey everyone, so let's talk about a huge problem. Why do so many big change projects at companies just fail? Today we're going to break down a modern playbook for building a system for change that's both rock solid and incredibly flexible so your next big move actually sticks. And here's how we're going to build it, in 4 key parts. First, we'll talk about why the old rules of change just don't work anymore. Then, we'll get into the fun part, mixing solid structure with real agility. After that, we'll figure out how to measure the things that actually matter. And finally, we'll wrap up with a leader's playbook for making it all happen. All right, let's dive right into our first section, the new rules of change. It's really about getting to the heart of why the traditional way of doing things just isn't cutting it in the world we live in today. I mean, this is the million-dollar question, right? You've seen it before. A company announces some massive new initiative with all this fanfare, and then a few months later, it just fizzles out. In a world that's always shifting, that old-school top-down approach, it just can't keep up. So, what's the solution? Well, it's not about throwing out the old playbook entirely. The real magic, the secret sauce, happens when you blend the two worlds. You take those proven, structured plans that give you a clear roadmap, and you combine them with adaptive, agile methods that let you learn and pivot on the fly. So, how does this blend actually work? That brings us to our second section. Think of this as the blueprints for our architecture. We're looking at the 2 things you need, a solid foundation and a flexible framework to build on top of it. Okay, this slide really gets to the core of it. On one side, you've got your structured roadmap, something like Kotter's famous 8-step model. Think of this as the steel frame of a skyscraper. It's essential, it's strong, it gives you the core structure. But on the other side, you have the adaptive conversation, which is all about lean change. This is like the interior design. The modular walls, the flexible spaces, it's what lets you build, test, and reconfigure the rooms as you learn what people actually need. And that steel frame, Kotter's model, is a classic for a reason. If you're doing something huge, like, say, merging 2 massive company cultures, you need this logical path. It guides you all the way from creating that initial sense of we have to do this now, straight through to making the new way of working a real, permanent part of your company's DNA. But a steel frame alone is just a skeleton. You need to bring it to life. Imagine you're rolling out a new software tool internally. This is where lean change is a game changer. Instead of just pushing it from the top down, you make it a conversation. It's about running small experiments, getting constant feedback, and actually co-creating the solution with your employees. It's about participation, not just a memo. Okay, so we've got our structure and our agile process working together, but how do we know if any of it is actually working? That brings us to our next section, where we connect these big ideas to real results. Because let's be honest, without good measurement, we're just flying blind. And this is where a framework called OKRs, Objectives and Key Results, becomes absolutely essential. They're the tool you use to translate that big fuzzy vision for change into something clear that everyone can get behind and work towards. It gives everybody that North Star. I absolutely love this quote. OKRs are the connective tissue. They're what makes sure that all those little agile experiments and feedback loops are actually moving the needle on the big strategic goals. They ensure all that speed and activity actually has a purpose. That's a great question, though, because setting goals is one thing, but how do you measure what's happening on the ground? Are people just checking a box, or are they really changing how they work and think? And for that, we need a data layer. Let's call it change telemetry. Seriously, think of it as the dashboard for your transformation. It goes beyond the basic project plan and tracks the stuff that really matters. Are people actually using the new tool? How are they feeling about the changes? Are their behaviors really shifting? This gives you a real-time pulse on what's going on under the surface. So this all leads us to the final, and maybe most critical, piece of the puzzle, leadership. How does a leader bring all of these different pieces together? Let's get into our final section, the Adaptive Leader's Playbook. You see, the role of a modern leader isn't to be a commander who has all the answers. It's to be an orchestrator. Their real job is to create a system that expertly balances the discipline of a plan with the adaptability to change it when the data tells them to. It's a constant, dynamic balancing act. And here's what that looks like in the real world. First, they create that balance between a solid plan and the freedom to be flexible. Second, they plug in that telemetry we talked about so they're constantly sensing what's happening. And third, and this is the most important part, they actually use that data to respond and make smart adjustments. It's a nonstop loop of sensing and responding. Which brings us to the ultimate point here. The goal of this entire architecture, this whole way of thinking, is to shift our mindset. Change isn't a project that you finish. It's a living, breathing capability that you build right into the DNA of your organization. So I'll just leave you with this one question to chew on. In the world we live in now, the companies that survive aren't just the ones that are built to last. They're the ones that are built to evolve. So ask yourself, is your organization just being built to withstand time? Or is it truly being built to adapt to whatever comes next?